this is just a little bit of a play on quick thinking. Where they use this company, Queen Burger, uses the lower of cost or market. Their accountant finds out that the inventory they have is worth $515. It's already on the books at $460. And then they ask you what adjusting entry you would make. Well, if you're using the lower of cost or market, which is lower at this time? That's the key. You're already on the books at $460. Normally you can't mark inventory up, only specific types of inventory. So it's sort of a play on words just to see how you're thinking about it. So I'll let you answer the next one then, in R2, which asks about average using weighted average. And we're going to move on to 11. And 11 is asking you a question about a mistake. The ending inventory was too high, I believe. It was too high. So if your inventory is too high, the ending inventory, what does that do to the cost of goods sold? So write that out, okay? Write out, okay, here's my, and do a comparison. Here's my beginning inventory, right? Plus what I buy, my purchases. And that gives me my goods available. Correct? So now I have goods available. And now I'm going to subtract my ending inventory. And that gives me my cost of goods sold. So if any one of these, this equation is changed, what if this is too much? What is the ultimate effect to the cost of goods sold? And do an example. Let's say my inventory should be, whoops, it's not agreeing with me. If your inventory should be maybe 2,000 and you have 3,000. You purchase 50. That gives you goods available of 3,050. Your ending inventory is 1,000. That gives you a cost of goods sold of 2,050. Okay, so now you have your benchmark. So now you can play. So what if my beginning inventory instead of my ending inventory is incorrect? What if this is incorrect? I think that's how they're going here. Let me see, what exactly does it say? I want to make sure I'm right. The inventory is overstated. So what happens? I'm all the way to here. What happens if all this scenario is the same, but instead of the ending inventory being stated correctly at 1,000, it's stated at 2,000. What does that do to my cost of goods sold? Is that going to increase it or decrease it? Let's see, we've got 3,050 minus 1,000 gives me 2,050. But if it's overstated, I have 3,050 minus 2,000. So my cost of goods sold would be lower, right? Now, what does that do to my gross margin or ultimately my net income? Well, if I have a lower cost of goods sold, the gross margin is going to be higher. So you have to kind of play with that. You're going to do the same thing, and I think it's going to ask you if I guess it doesn't. I thought, let's see, in 12, let's see what it asks. Refer back to how would the inventory error affect the cost of goods sold and gross margin for the year ending in 2012 if the prior error was not caught. So what you want to do is do again the entire scenario over and see, because the ending inventory here becomes your beginning inventory for the following year. How is that going to affect that that gross margin? And that will take, again, some playing around with, just like this. Create the scenario, write it out so you can get it concrete in your head. You could probably do this in your head, but it might hurt just a bit. But if you write it out in a concrete manner and can see it, it will stick with you a lot longer. So that's how I would do those two. Email me if you have any problems with that. On 13, it asks you, let's look at 13. They're calculating your gross margin, using it to calculate the estimated cost of ending inventory by the gross profit method. So what you're going to do is take some numbers and plug them in here. So what was your beginning inventory? You would put it here, your purchases, your cost of goods available, that gives you your cost of goods sold. So you've got beginning inventory, 55,800. They have purchases of 277,000. And then you would add that to get your goods available. And then it's giving you, what does it want you to do? That gives you a cost of goods available. And then you come down here with your sales revenue. And you're going to, again, plug in numbers. And they do give you those numbers. The sales were 476,000, and then less the estimated gross profit of 45,000. If you're using the gross profit method of figuring out the cost of goods sold, your cost of goods sold would actually be 55% of the $476,000. The way they have this set up in the template, it is a little bit backwards, but it'll work. So if your gross margin profit is 45% and you multiply that times the $476,000, I have one too many zeros, you would come up with the gross margin, and you could then deduct that. And that would give you your cost of goods sold. And ultimately then, you would use the equation of beginning inventory plus purchases gives you your goods available here. And then minus the cost of goods sold would give you the $71,000 ending inventory. So here's your goods available here, which you add up, minus the cost of goods sold, would then give you the ending inventory. Very easily could simply have just multiplied the 55% times the 476 and plugged that in right here and done away with this part. But this kind of supports what you're doing. So write this one out so you can remember that equation or that formula for finding the end of inventory in a backwards sense. So I think we will end there and start up with 14, because 14 is a long one. And I think 14 will just kind of drive home FIFO, LIFO, and weighted average. So here we go.